I want to go over the 5 things that you should know before you go out there and launch your podcast. I started my own podcast in 2015, and this is really what I wish I had known before I'd gone off and started my podcast. The first thing being is target audience. Who am I looking to speak to? Back in 2015, when I launched my own podcast, I was looking to talk to entrepreneurs, real estate investors, pretty much anyone that I thought was successful in their own right. I talked to a Hollywood actress. I talked to someone that had done a ton of sales in the network marketing game. I talked to authors. I talked to, like I mentioned, investors. And for me, I was just trying to figure out what was their secret to success. And the whole premise of the show was all about self-development. Like, how did you mentally be able to build your business? Because, I mean, there's so many businesses out there that people start that never really take off the ground. Maybe they become stagnant. So I was trying to figure out, how can I get this information out of the guests that I have on our show to help out with our audience and help them understand how these individuals built their business. Conversely, today I run the REI Marketing Secrets podcast, and on the show I bring on real estate investors and I talk to them as if I'm an LP. And what I mean by that is I'm interviewing them like, what does it look like to invest in your deal? Why do you choose these markets? What does the communication look like after someone's invested in your deal? What's the average returns that someone could expect from investing in your deal? So that's really who my target audience is. Maybe sometimes I'll bring in a guest outside of that, but I need to know who that target audience is. Outside of that, I want to make sure that when I'm starting my show, I have a backfill of episodes. What I mean by that is when I recently released my podcast, I had recorded 10 episodes already, and I was going to release 5 the first day, which means I had 5 weeks, so I put out 1 episode a week, 5 weeks worth of episodes ready to go, ready to be released. And over time, I built that up, where now I have about probably 10 to 12 episodes already ready to go, scheduled out and everything, which means that if I didn't record an episode for 2 months, and I just want to take a vacation, I just got tired of interviewing people, maybe it's the summertime, I want to spend more time with my family, work a little bit less, then I'm going to have that availability because I have these backfilled. So you definitely want to make sure you have that. It just really allows you to be more consistent. Another aspect I wish I had known when I was first starting off was when it came to editing, was, am I going to be the editor, or am I going to outsource it to someone on like Fiverr, Upwork, someone like our company? When I first started, I didn't have money to go out and hire someone, so I bootstrapped it. I've used both Audacity and GarageBand to edit the podcast. Maybe it was 100%, but those are the tools I used. I just watched YouTube tutorials. I remember I'd watch tutorials on I believe his name was Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income. He had a lot of great free content out there showing me how I could edit my podcast to make it sound professional while also not having to go out there and hire someone. So you just have to make that decision. Is it going to be you, or is it going to be you're outsourcing it? If it's going to be yourself, for every 30 minutes, you're probably going to have to spend an hour to an hour and a half of editing, so you just want to keep that in mind. Another tip I wish I knew was just how hard it is to have a podcast, and that I need to have that level of commitment, because in the beginning, the show would grow and I would have like 20 listeners an episode, and then it might grow to 40 listeners and 50 listeners. And I ran that show for about 2 years, and one of the biggest regrets, honestly, I have is not running that show anymore, because back in 2017, when I gave it up, we were averaging like 2,000 to 5,000 listeners an episode, which is fairly good for any podcast. And I've just been consistent with it. And once I started to hit between 6 to 12 months, that's really when I started to see the podcast take off. That's when I really started to see more listeners coming to that podcast. So when you're going out there and starting your own show, don't become discouraged because it's been out for 5 months, 4 months, and you're not seeing a ton of downloads, you're not seeing a ton of traction. Just understand that it could take really anywhere from 6 to 12 months for you to really start to see success within it. And the last piece of advice I would give would just be, make sure that when you go out there and you produce this episode, take the time, whether again it's you, whether it's someone you hire, to create social media clips from the interviews that you did. I didn't do that with my first podcast. I'm now doing it with this podcast that I started back in March. I find that in a 30-minute interview, you can honestly, you get about 10 social media clips that you can use to go out there and promote across your social media. Then the podcast guest can take it, they can produce on their social media. And again, you can hire someone. If you're doing it on your own, it'll probably be a couple hours a week worth of work. There's a tool that we use as a company. There's actually two tools. One's called Capwing. That's very good for editing. We use another one called Video. Pretty much how it sounds, but VEED.io, I believe is the name of it. They're both $25, $30 a month each, and they're phenomenal. I really like Capwing. I find that when it comes to Capwing, I can upload a video, and it might take an hour, but it'll create 10 social media clips, because back in the old day, I would have to take the video, and I would have to listen to the entire interview, write down, okay, from minute 22 minutes in, 19 seconds, to 25 minutes, 16 seconds. That's the clip that I want, then I have to cut it, and there's a ton of work behind it. Now you get this AI technology, and it's just phenomenal to use, and it just makes your life a lot easier. So again, you can go out and professionally hire someone, or you could use this tool. Maybe someone on your team could do it. It's already there, but you definitely want to take it, because it's just so easy to share. When your interview goes live and you say, hey, your interview has gone live, feel free to share, but you don't give me any of the information, it's just going to be a little bit trickier to do that. So I definitely recommend having a good social media person on your team, or outsourcing it to share these interviews that you do. But again, just to reiterate these 5 tips or 5 things that you should know for launching your own podcast. Have your target audience down. Make sure you have a backfill of episodes. Figure out if you're going to edit it, someone else is going to edit it, because again, it's going to be a pretty decent time commitment. With commitment, you want to be committed to your podcast for a very long period of time, and it could be anywhere from 6 to 12 months and longer for you to start to see results. And you want to make sure you have some sort of plan in place to edit these podcasts for your social media accounts.